Here, Milton is feeling uh, পাঠিয়ে দিয়েছি একটু দেখতে আছেন দেখে একটু বাদে বলছি ওকে একটু বাদে তোমার দেখে তোমায় বলছি shall I compare the maybe হ্যাঁ so whatever be the case now we are beginning with that stuff that very poem on his blindness is also sounded by John Milton. This actually narrates to Milton's fate, how he had turned blind at a very young age. And it is true account because in his time he was a very learned person from Oxford he was. Now here the poet says, when I consider how my light is spent, when I think that how I've gone blind, are half my days in this dark world and wide. The world around him has turned dark because of his blindness. And that one talent which is dead to hide, God had given him talent to write poetry. Now that is lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent. Now I cannot utilize that art of writing poetry. My soul is interested to write, to serve therewith my Maker. So then only I can think that I am doing justice to my Maker. That He had given me one talent and I am making use of it. To serve therewith my Maker and present my true account, lest a returning child. How do you present your account to God when you leave this world and go to His heaven? So, taught God exact day labor, light delight. Does really God want my labor? This is the question that he asks himself. Does really God want my labor? Wants that I should repay him my talent that he has given me? I fondly ask, but patience to prevent that patience tells me to prevent that murmur soon replies. The patient tells me that never doubt God's blessings are you. God does not need either man's work nor his own gifts. So God is not asking you what you can give him. He does not need man's work, either man's work or his own gifts. Whatever he has gifted to man. Here Milton has been gifted with writing poetry. Who best bear his mild yoke, that means one who can bear the punishment and the reward of God. Mild yoke, they serve him best. So if a person takes the gift of God earnestly, God is pleased. His state is kingly, thousands at his bidding speed, post over land and ocean without rest. He is the kingly God, the best of all, and he knows how to keep his all his angels who are always working under him. He knows them how to keep them busy. They are always busy. With what? With God's command. They want to give God that opportunity to give him command. So he asks many questions. He mindly wants to ask God what has happened with him. But he is kingly God. Thousands at his bidding speed. Who are the thousands? The angels, the archangels of God. They are moving around and they are posted over land and ocean without rest. They also serve who only stand and wait. So those persons who are not able to do anything, suppose the beggarly persons who are not able to do work because they are not blessed with that blessings of God to do work for God. They also serve God, just waiting on Him and expecting that they will be blessed somehow or the other. There's nothing to worry about it. God will come forward and bless them. They also serve God. So all these people who wait for God's providence and yet not able to do anything, they also know that they will be blessed by God somehow or the other. They will be blessed by God. And he did not worry that at the present moment he is not able to do God's work because God is always with him. So this he says that to everyone there is God. So for the one who can work ably and is not yet, and the one who is not yet ready to work ably and do everything under God's command, he also serves God. So Milton wants to say that God does not differentiate between the ones who can work under him and also he is not worried about the ones who cannot work under him. All are equal to him. All do their duty unto him. God does not ask anyone that whether you are able to do work for me or not. Whatever you do for God, God is satisfied with it. And so Milton thinks that because he has turned blind at the age of 43, suppose at the age of 43, the world around him is all dark. He thinks that God will question him on the day of the judgment. That what has he done that God had sent him on earth? Could he do anything for mankind? But patience tell him, hold on to your nerves. God never asks anybody and wait for their chance to receive mercy of God. So God is great in in that way. He's always great. He does not ask anybody to get things done. Whatever and whoever so does for him certain things or serves him best, God is his. This he means to say in the poem. At one point of time, he questions the providence of God, and the patients they tell him that unnecessarily you are questioning God's providence. God is by everyone the same. though the gift of skill given to him by God would remain same, nothing more, nothing less. That he's not able to do something that God will punish him for that. Nothing like that is going to happen to him. He can rest assured of the fact that God will not question him why you have not been able to do service unto me when I had given you hands and feet to get it done. But he will not be answerable to God. God will not question him because God knows that those who can really do will do, and those who will not be able to do it, God will never say why you have not been able to do it. So, he will not be answerable to God at any point of time. So, he need not worry that what awaits him, what punishment awaits him. He means to say that. Now, as God has taken his eyesight, Milton is very sad. He thinks that God will not spare him. So ultimately, the summary of the poem is as such. The poem is about poet himself. He became blind at an early age, and when he could write poetry, at that age he turned blind. He doesn't understand that what punishment awaits him now because he is blind. But patience tells him, have patience with yourself. God is very answerable. He will not ask any person who is not able to serve him better, the best. He will never ask him, what has happened to you that you have not served me well? Now, John Newton, he was a great erudite person, knowledgeable person. He read religious texts and books and Bible thoroughly. Wrote Paradise Lost, book one, Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained. The two great epics. John Milton was born in 1608 to a Puritan family. During his service to the Commonwealth in 1952, Milton became blind, and it became necessary for others to share in his labors. His blindness occasioned him one of the most moving moments in his life when he thought that how unfortunate is he that even with eyes and with the talent to write good poetry, he is not able to do so. His blindness occasioned one of the most moving of his sonnets on his blindness, written in 1655. It records his fear that he will never be able to use his God given gift for poetry again, yet God may demand an accounting for his righteousness. How far he has been true and honest to himself? That is his question that he puts forward to himself. And his entry into the heaven will depend upon well he has used the gift that God gave him. You might tell me but one thing, like we never think it in that way. That is true, we never think it. That will be questionable to God in the last day of our judgment. So the sonnet ends with Milton's acceptance of the fact that what God wants of him is obedience and nothing more. Obedience and resignation. Patience tells him that he should not question God's providence. He can then serve God even if he cannot write poetry. But they also serve who only stand and wait. So the poor beggar on the street who cannot move, or the disabled ones, they also serve God. The most effective of the possible sonnet is this sonnet, usually called Sonnet number 19 of Milton on his blindness. The solution to his blindness is the first of many of his poetry. In fact, he is very, very taken aback by the fact that he is blind. When I consider how my life is spent when I have turned blind, when I judge how my ability to write poetry to see has been taken away, or half my days in this dark world and wide, that means 43, 44 years he had become blind. It was expected in those days that a man lived for 70 plus years. Or half my days in this dark world and wide, after I have only lived half of my life, and that one talent, that is the talent to write poetry, I cannot make use of it, lost with me useless. Though my soul more bent, though my soul wants to write. So this is based on the parable of the talents. Matthew's Bible. In the Bible, Matthew's speech is the parable of the talents in which the unprofitable servant was punished for burying, not using the talent which his master had given him. The master had three servants. The first one he gave three talents. The second one also he gave talent. Talent is gold coin. The third one also. First and second made use of the talent, made it twice. But the third servant thought of not spending it and hiding it in the earth. So Milton is pondering whether he will be punished for not using his ability, his talent to write poetry that is useless, and will weigh down his final judgment. To serve there with my maker and present my true account, lest returning child, he might scold me when I go to heaven. So Milton cannot serve God by using his ability to see and now he must face God in his true account for being blind. And if God was to reprimand or scold him, Milton, because he has not served God, well, he will say the following. So at that time he thinks that God exact day labor, light denied. The one who cannot see God, does God need from him any work that he should do unto God? I fondly ask, he says. Now patience is a way of personified, tells him that have patience. God does not need from any person who is unable to work or do anything or wants to do something for God. If he stands and waits for God's providence and blessings, he is equally blessed. So Milton wonders now that blindness has fallen upon him before half his working life is spent. Whether God will still expect him to use his talent. Milton now says that with patience, his murmurs fight against God, tells him you're a fool or you're not sensible enough to think of God's providence on mankind. The person is not able to work. God does not demand any labor from him. So all his blindness is an autobiographical element that talks about Milton's own life. John Milton's poem is therefore an autobiographical sonnet, 14 lines. Miltonian sonnet. You have that Shakespearean sonnet, two sonnets. I've discussed with you of other type of sonnets also, Shakespearean, Petrarchian. It is written here in the Petrarchian sonnet style. Also, Petrarchian sonnet consists of 14 lines. Here also the first 8 lines is known as octave, introduce a problem, and the remaining 6 lines, the stet, finds a solution. So the poem differs from the Petrarchian sonnets in theme. Generally, Petrarchian sonnets deal with love, whereas this poem deals with spiritual and physical pain of the writer. The poem is written in the first person narration. The poet himself is writing about his own destiny. Sometimes it happens to us when we are totally deprived of our own ability that time. We question ourselves. So here the poet laments about the loss of his sight. That is not his fault. It is said what I have read from Milton's life story that he used to read late into the night in candlelight and his eyes could not bear that strain and so he turned blind at the age of 44 years. I told you 43, 44 years. It was in 1652 that he became turned blind. He wrote the sonnet in 1655, 3 years after he turned blind. When he was completely blind, lost his vision, was unable to write. So the poem begins with a subordinate clause, when which leaves the readers in suspense. The poet talks about his blindness. He has become blind in the middle of his life. He has to live in the dark and wide world for the rest of his life. He feels that God has gifted him with the greatest talent, writing poetry, but he is unable to do so. He cannot write poetry now. But he expresses his desire to serve God by using the ability of writing good poems, but he is unable to do so because he is turned blind and blind for all, forever. So Milton feels that God might scold him for not using his talent. Milton asks whether God needs man's service. He foolishly questions. If God wants man to serve him, why did God take away the light from his eyes? He wonders whether he'll be able to produce great works being blind. So as Milton laments about the blindness in God's criticism, patience, which is personified over here with a capital P, a guardian angel of God, the angel, the God you believe in, who guides you is the guardian angel, arrives with the reply that God never needs man's service. Whoever is ready to bear the burden of life will serve the God well. God has servants all over the world who are all the time serving Him over the land and the ocean without any rest. So the poet realizes the fact that God does not need man's service and does not take away the talents He has given to man. He is the supreme power and has countless servants, means angels, who carry out his orders. The people who accept all the struggles of life without questioning God serve him most. Thus, the poem ends with a positive note. The octave of the poem starts with the pain and the problem of blindness. The sestet concludes with a positive note that accepting the entire struggle without lamenting is serving God. So, this poem describes Milton's philosophy of life. When I consider how my life is spent, has lots of themes. First of all, there's the theme of blindness that is working behind it. Theme of blindness is there because blindness is a great theme. It is only when Milton becomes totally blind that time he thinks of the providence of God that he must have lost, how my light is spent, how light is what eyesight is spent, he talks about. It's a poem about coming in terms with the disability. This thing can happen to anyone, and yet we take it that it's a normal way of becoming blind. Nobody makes you blind, but it is a physical disability that might set in anyone who might be working too much, and for that reason, it might act as a sort of a break for him to stop doing work anymore that God does not want him to. So the literary talents are lodged with Milton, but which Milton cannot use this. He thinks that the literary talent is useless with him. So the word useless suggests linguistic and poetic skills of the poet, a man who can no longer tolerate that he has turned blind. We know how painful it is to turn blind. So Milton is also painful here. After he turned blind at the age of 44, a man's life expectation is always to be 70. But if he turns blind so quickly, he might question the providence of God that he has not been able to do service unto God for which he has been sent on earth. So in that respect, this sonnet is very easy sonnet, nothing to feel afraid of. They would ask you some lines to be explained or the substance of the critical appreciation or Milton's faith in God or how Milton has become frustrated over the fact that he has turned blind at the ripe age of 44. And he had the ability to write poems, but he could not do so because he had turned blind. It could happen to anybody on earth. At the early age, anyone can turn blind. But that does not question God's providence. God is in no way responsible for your blindness, but it is your destiny that has made you blind. So you have to accept the fact and think that those who are not able to work, even God is with them. God has never left their company. He's still there. So the spiritual doubt that has set in Milton is at once re-established from his own patients that warn him and tell him not to misjudge God's providence because God is just with everyone. The one who is able with him and the one who is disabled, or one who is born able and then turns disabled is also God's dearest because the one who only waits and serves God, not able to do any work for God's sake, is also God's favorite. God doesn't make him different from others. He is like others. And if he's honest and has obeyed God all throughout his life and had faith in him, then God is always with him. That is Milton's Christian belief, he said. How the Christian believes that God is also with the rich and with the poor. It is not only alone the rich who is always with God. No, there is no differences in that. He means to say that for God everything is equal. So nobody or we do not fear God's judgment against him because he's not able to carry out his duty, the duty that God had given him to perform. And each one of us are doing our duty. Some are working hard, helping others in their problems, in their needs, in their necessities. Some who are unable to do so, they only name God. They talk of Christ, they talk of Allah, they talk of any God's name. And in their name, they might earn money. That doesn't mean that God has deprived them. God is always there to help, also the one who is not able to do anything. So, this is a Christian belief, this is a belief in all religion that your life is never wasted when you think that it has been wasted. By some turn of events, people lose their eyes, their eyesight, they lose their limbs and yet they survive. They make a mark in their life because must be they have done something good and God is pleased with them. So to judge God's providence, Milton thinks, as a true Christian he was, that he was not doing the right thing to do. It was not the right thing to be done because God is there, always there, and will never deprive anybody at any point of time because he is unable to do what is expected of him. It is very difficult to say that you are very unfortunate because you have not been able to do anything for your better self. It's a wrong perception. The poet means to say that we have believed God very wrongly, and it's this reason that gives us pain. So we must have patience, and patience will take care. So he remembers that those who only stand and wait also serve him best. So this is the theory of his poem. This is the philosophy of his poem. This is how he explains himself, his earnest devotion to God. He believes that God is always there when you are in good times or when you're in bad times. He's there to help you out. No question should arise with the providence of God. So, in the poem, we also find patience that work all throughout the poem. It is the patience that makes the poet aware of the fact that he is doing the wrong thing by judging God's blessings on him and judging whether God would really bless him for his inability to write because he cannot see. His eyesight cannot work. His talent that God had given him to write good poetry has now failed. If he tries, he can also continue to write poetry. That is what he had done in Paradise Lost. If you have read it, it is blindness only he wrote Paradise Lost. And so naturally, you shouldn't take it for granted that somehow or the other you will deprive not only yourself, if you think wrongly of God's providence, you will also deprive yourself. So, spirituality and faith is a great inspiration in his writing, and that he wants to put before us that we must have faith in God. It is only the faith in God that makes us all rightful, good, and honest men on earth. We shouldn't lose patience. Patience we should have. Even we may be unsuccessful, but the very next moment, only the patience itself will go to prove that we are successful beings. That way, patience responds to him and tells him, God doth not need either man's work nor his gifts. If he's able to do, God is pleased. If not, okay, God will forgive and forget about it. So, this reminds the speaker that in time he will learn how best to serve God. We can all serve God best if we really want to do it. If you think that you have given God the best present and so God will also give you the best of all present, it might not happen. God does not take any bribe, only your duty that is called for. Must be honest. Now, in this respect, we can question ourselves. Is it always true that whatever we believe is right? That is different thing. Belief is something that you have to establish from your own. You cannot say that I will start disbelieving everything that comes onto my surface. If you start doing that, whom will you deprive? You'll deprive yourself. Why? Because you started thinking something which you shouldn't have thought of it. So here we see that there are many things to be understood, and it is then only we can make our life a wholesome one, worth living, if we live with honesty and integrity. Just the previous one which I've poem I've taught you. So the previous poem that you have studied is virtue, I think. Virtue, you have studied that poem. So that virtue says that if you're honestly virtuous, God is with you. But most of the people around us, they're dishonest. And so naturally, they start thinking that they will never be able to do anything in their life because they themselves don't know what they are. So that is what the poet means to say, that one should be virtuous in his way, in his dealings, in whatever he does. If you all at once starts thinking that he is right and everybody is wrong, then what else can be done? There are many people, who think that whatever they are thinking is right and others are all wrong. In that case, God does not like them, does not hate them also, but does not like them. Why? Because they are not words God's love. That is what is meant over here. If you want the love of God, you need to grow the faith in Him. If you do not have that faith in Him, then of course you can never love God. That is what is said about the poem and nothing else. So this is all about the poem that I just now discussed. There are many doubts, spiritual doubt, acceptance, patience, honesty, integrity of oneself is very, very important, and that should be understood very well. So, that is what is expected in the poem and nothing more. We need to understand that much only and nothing more. So, if you'll be asked question, don't think that the question will be a very big one.